Her recent involvement has been with the qualitative research of Jiva project. Rather, she's gathering data from families, dais, and others in 4 remote areas of India. She has even visited those areas probably which are out of reach completely. No one is allowed to go there, and she has been a part of that India. She has made a film, Born at Home, under Matrika, which has got millions of followers and viewers. Their ritual, birth songs, notions of goddesses and gods and demons and ghosts and ancestors all span the gaps between medicine, religion, and gender. Matrika.india.org is her website where you can find most of the information. She has recently published a book, Towards a Female Shastra, in Kindle, which is available on Amazon and also available on her own website, Matrika website. I highly recommend this book to anyone who is interested in the feminine, who is interested in birthing, who is interested in knowing about tradition, world tradition, to this whole philosophy or this whole idea about birth. So I would invite Janet to come and talk to us. And I would also be sharing her screen with a PowerPoint presentation. So Janet, please come and say hello to your audience, and then we can start with the...
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and to join these wonderful women. Is a Jharkhand folk story about Shasti Ma. So I'd like to show you some photos of the women of this part of Jharkhand. They are all midwives, dais. And this is a talab, a small lake from where they draw water. Here is the post-birth honoring of the water of life. So we know that there's water in the womb, and here there's an external water and an internal water. So they're honoring the external water. So the dais are both young. Now, I should say here that this work was done 5-6 years ago. So things may have changed since then, but they were both young. This is Bari, and older. This is Maitila. So women sometimes honored the wheel in order to make labor faster. And here is Futima, who's explained to us about labor, and that's why she's holding her tummy. So when we were interviewing these dais, these traditional Indian midwives, about their experiences at birth, and their techniques, skills, and rituals, everyone we interviewed, including a Muslim dai, mentioned Shasti Ma, a goddess of childbirth. So the dais talked about how they invoked her at the time of birth and thanked her in the postpartum rituals. I was working on the Jiva project in one of the poorest and most medically underserved parts of India. But this is precisely where dais continued to meet the needs as best they could of birthing women, and where younger women continued to learn the traditional birth work of the elders of their community. A village woman named Himani, who was listening to this conversation about birth, told a story about Shasti Ma, which described her link to the more familiar Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom, and explained the custom of eating basi khana, or day-old food, on the day after Saraswati Puja. This is not a well-known story which you'll find in books on goddesses and Indian religion, but that's the beauty of India, that each region, each area has its own mythic narratives. So this is what, now I will read you what Himani told us. There was one old man who had 60 sons, and that's why he was known as Sata, which is the number 60 in Hindi. One night he had a dream, and in his dream, an old lady asked him to look for brides for his sons, and he would find them. The condition is that they should be married into a family that has 60 daughters. But he asked the old lady where he would find such a family. The old lady gave him a clue that he should travel to a distant place where he would fall down. Then there he would find such a family. The next day, early in the morning, he started his journey. He walked a long distance before tiring and said, I don't know where I'll find these 60 girls. And after a rest, he again started walking, and then he stumbled and fell down. A woman was washing dishes nearby, and Sata asked that woman if there was any family in her village that had 60 daughters. She replied, "Come along with me. I have 60 daughters." So Sata married his sons with those girls, and they started living happily ever after. The Saraswati Puja festival came, and they celebrated the day after Saraswati Puja, which is known as Basi Bhat, old food, day-old food, with bhat being a rice dish. According to the custom, Sata's daughter-in-law offered him Basi Bhat. Sata had thought that on that day he would indeed eat fresh bhat. This thought flashed in Sata's mind, and and Shasti Ma heard it while she was in the jungle. Suddenly it started raining heavily. Water flowed into all the houses, and all of Sata's daughters and sons-in-law and sons and daughters-in-law died in the flood. Sata was shocked to see all this. He asked, "How can a man who was passing by the reason for this catastrophe?" The man advised him, "You should go to Shashti Ma and ask her." "But where would I find Shashti Ma?" he asked. The old man said, "She lives in a banyan tree. Go there." He fell at her feet, saying, "You are Shashti Ma?" And then she said, "No, I'm not Shashti Ma," but told him to go to the 60th banyan tree. When he reached the 60th tree, Sata saw an old lady whose hair was untied and disheveled, and blood and mucus streamed out of her body. She asked the old man to clean her body with his tongue. He did this. When he spat, after each spit, one of his sons appeared before him. In this way, all the sons and all 60 of his daughter-in-laws came alive again. He asked Shashti Ma to please forgive him for complaining about the Basi Bhat. This is why Basi Bhat is eaten on the day after Saraswati Puja. Now, one of the first things to notice about this story is that despite the fantastic events that take place, the locations and activities are common to everyday life. The concerns with finding partners for children to marry, banyan trees, dreams, traveling by foot, washing dishes, wise old lady, bhat or common food, blood and mucus, and even Sata's dissatisfaction with the food his daughter-in-law served him are part and parcel of everyday life. Another aspect, and this is more relevant to the topic of birth, is the common rhetorical device in Indian tales of displacement of body parts. Let's look at the images used here. Sata cleans up the old lady's blood and mucus with his tongue. Is this his phallus? He spits and the son comes alive. Is this ejaculation? On one level, this is like Athena being born from Zeus's head, the male claiming the power to give birth. Arrogant, just like Sata's dissatisfaction with the food. And on another level, the penis must enter the vagina, a place of blood and mucus, those dirty but fertile places in many males' imagination, for conception to take place. But most importantly, I would suggest, is the cleaning of with that supposedly clean place, the mouth, of these oozing bodily fluids. Anyone who's recently birthed or works with birthing women is very familiar with these fluids. He has to literally taste this yucky stuff in order to redeem himself of his transgression and the subsequent catastrophe. I would suggest that he needs to gain knowledge about women's creative juices. He forgot the honoring of Shashti Ma / Saraswati by his disappointment at Basi Bhat and was dissatisfied with his daughter-in-law, the one who will provide him with grandchildren, continuing the family line. The activities of cooking and pregnancy involving the pot on the stove and the pot in the belly are often prominent in the Indian imagination. I remember one Dai mentioning that, describing labor pain as the pot is boiling. Now let's look at Shashti Ma and her role in the story. Interestingly, Himani, who told the story, ended up by making 2 points. First, she explained the Dai does Shashti Ma's worship, so on that day of Basi Bhat, this story is told to everyone. She also said that Shashti Ma appears in different forms. Here, the identities of Shashti Ma and Saraswati, and even the Dai who does her worship, are fluid. Theologically, there's nothing about these deities, these stories, which can be defined as mutually exclusive. Saraswati and Shasti Ma and even the Dai merge into one another, all signifying guarding and helping the creative force. The name in Shasti in Hindi, Shrishti, or creation, I looked up the meaning of Saras, the root of Saraswati, and found that Saras actually means water, which is continually flowing, always new, renewing, and fertile, the seat of all creative streams. In the high tradition, Saraswati is associated with learning, culture, and knowledge. It is fitting then that Saraswati's transgression, his neglect of the custom of honoring Saraswati by eating basikana, results in a flood. I love this story because it depicts events that are earthy and sacred, and at the same time, both earthy and sacred. I share this story because it opens up a world view in which the fluids of the female body, and by implication birth, such a mundane and everyday occurrence, is the central concern. So to conclude, I would like to acknowledge my partners in the Jiva project, Meera, Lindsay, Imrana, Sandhya, and Leela, as well as John Chaitanya Munch.
Here we have a few questions with us. Why, this is by Sakshi Mathuria. She wants to know why wheel.
Why is the wheel? It's just because it keeps on moving. That's what the explanation. It's a symbolism that Jan was explaining, so that the birth takes place easily. Am I right, Jan? Is that what you were meaning?
Except I don't use the word symbol.
In your slides, you have shown the two women were worshipping wheel. So wheel is ongoing, it's moving on. So it symbolizes the creation.
On Saraswati Puja, we couldn't work.
Also, writers are not supposed to work in that day.
Oh, really? On Saraswati Puja, that writers aren't supposed to work? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Let's ask this. There is a question. Is there any relation with symbolism of Tantra and your why you are not one? Why you do not prefer to say symbol about the wheel?
So I think Tantra is because Tantra is bottom up. I mean, this is my understanding. So many things are from below, and Tantra particularly is from common practice, everyday's practice, and it moves up into more fancy stuff. Very complex relationship.
Thank you, Janet, for this wonderful talk. We really learn a lot about Shasti Ma and about all these experiences that you have collected during so many years of research. Thank you very much.